The CFL now puts the players who are on its negotiation list online. You can now see them. You can see who the teams want to get. Is this a good marketing ploy or not so much? Let's dive down that rabbit hole. Bubba O'Neill back at home now that he has safely finished his trip to the Service Ontario booth. It only
not over yet.
We had to send out a search committee for him.
Not over yet.
No, it's not over yet?
So I went through the entire process. Stood in line. Got my ticket. Stood in line again. Finally got in. Sat down. Wait. Because there's only 2 people serving people inside one of these things. Only to be told that I do not have the proper documentation for my needs. We're not listed online, right? And I'm not given a free bypass again. So you know what? I was going to do it today, but because I wanted to be with you guys and not inside my car waiting for this whole process, I'm going to try it again on Monday.
Can we write you up a phony document, maybe? You just carry that around with you?
This is the worst, guys. Maybe we should scrap our sports topic and talk about our Ontario services here. They are horrible.
There was a guy in Kentucky, or I think it was Kentucky the other week, who got arrested because cops noticed when they drove by that his license plate looked a little funny. They pulled him over. They noticed it was hand-drawn with magic marker and on. It was a homemade license. Maybe that's what you should do with your health card.
Yeah, that's right.
Drawn health card.
Or don't get
health
sick.
Card number 1.
Don't get sick.
Yeah, or don't get sick. All right. Well, I'm trying to think of a good segue, and I'm not coming up with one right now. But the CFL, speaking of sick, the CFL's a little sick these days with what's going on. Maybe there's our segue. They have put out their lists, their negotiation lists of players that they have. I think most people know what this is, right? Players that they get to choose and lock up, and that they have the rights to them decide to come to Canada. And Bubba, this is something they started 3 or 4 years ago, thereabouts, as a bit of a marketing idea to generate interest. Does it work?
I think, I'll be honest with you, I think it's more to the hardcore fan more than anyone else. And it's of interest to these people who cover their teams really, really intensely. Because I would tell you this, you would have to be a very intense fan to know the 10 names that were released. I believe there's 45, you can correct me, Steve, you're 45 that are allowed on your neg list, and 10 were released yesterday. You would have to be really, 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 really good in your NCAA Division 1, 2, and 3 to know who these guys are. I did research one guy, a quarterback that played at the XFL for St. Louis, who certainly has some potential. He was a recent cut of the Kansas City Chiefs, and apparently they really, really liked him, but they needed some more experience. So maybe there's a guy that we can kind of follow, but I think this is really more so to the hardcore fan than anyone else, because for the rest of people out there that are just CFL fans, they're not going to know who these guys are.
Steve, let me ask you a question off what Bubba just said. If you're the Ticats or you're any other CFL team and you put out 10 of your 45 guys, are you putting out your biggest name 10 guys, or are you putting out 10 no names that are just because you want to put them out? Do you want secrecy, or do you really want to get people talking?
There's been an argument throughout the league about all this, and which is why you should never let football ops people run anything that has anything to do with marketing in the league. We've seen that time and time again in football, not just the CFL or the NFL too, but the Ticats are good that way. Remember, they were the first team to do this, and they did it when they had Manziel. And it got us all ready for Manziel right away. A lot of people started paying more attention here to Manziel, but I agree that most of them were probably football people. These are probably the ones that have, because there's 5 quarterbacks, they stay on the list longer. Quarterbacks stay on the list longer. So these are probably some ones that I think you're going to see here. They want to do it, as the story said in the spec today, that they want to do it partly because it's good for marketing. So they agree with it. And even football ops agrees with it there. Now, that still leaves 35 guys that can play around with. There are reasons for and against releasing them from a football standpoint, from a contract standpoint. There's a lot of leverage that can go on by those players. Initiating. Remember, Manziel tried to pull us. Mansell tried to pull this when his agent tried to, and that had something to do with the neg list and forcing them to offer him a contract, all that kind of thing. And of course, it got some more news out there. I think it's really important at this time of year here, and it's important. I mean, it's not our job to do their publicity for them, but we tried to explain it a little more than we would in most years because people are a little hungry for Ticat news that care about the Ticats. But very important for this in this down period for them now to at least get some play out of this.
Rick?
I think this is a big, it's marketing 101. It is exposing your brand to not only your hardcore fans, but there's a lot of, football fans in general who may not follow the CFL or even the NCAA to the nth degree, but whenever some kind of football news comes out, they're certainly interested in what's going on. So I think, doing this, unfurling this list of names forces both the hardcore and maybe the fair weather fan to do a little research like Bubba did to say, hey, who is this guy? I recognize the name somewhat. Let's do a Google search. So this is brilliant marketing. We're in a year where there was no CFL at all, and we're talking about the Canadian Football League because of this list.
I got to disagree, guys. To me, this list has always looked like the little brother with his wish list that was almost none of it is going to come true. And it looks, to me, it kind of looks like a continual reminder that the CFL is not the NFL. And we all know that. But when you put out this list of here's who we want, and then, Manziel came when his options ran out, but the rest of the guys, you're going to say, they're never coming. Doesn't look great on the league. You should have guys with the CFL on their wish list, not the other way around.
Well, you do. The agents they get flooded by calls now, especially now that the other two leagues are down.
I think I'm with you a little bit, Scott. I believe there is an element of fake news to this because really, and again, you got to be, as I said earlier, you got to be really, really intense to know a lot of these guys that are on this list. So, it's the player personnel guys, again, people really close to the teams, individual teams that will know these players. But the names that people will recognize, the fair weather football fans, which I would say are 75% of all CFL fans, will recognize a particular amount of names like Colin Kaepernick, who was on, I believe, on the Ticats neg list for a time. And they will see those names. They will recognize those names. But to your point, Scott, they are never coming here.
Let me ask you guys a question. Hands up. Rick, I'm going to get to you in just one sec, but hands up each time I say, here's the 10 the Ticats released on their neg list. Just put your hand up quickly, each one that you know this guy, or you would know enough about this guy that you could talk to another football fan about him. Trey Crawford, Anthony Gordon, Sam Hartman, Anthony Johnson, Benny LeMay, Byron Marshall, Jalen Morton, Jordan Ta'amu, Zach Thomas, Daniel Wise.
Right.
If the point is to get conversation going, find one or two that people might know and put them out there. You put these 10, and to my point, it sounds like a wish list for guys you're going to never get, and it also sounds like you're advertising something no one should care about anyway, because who's heard of these guys? If you've
actually got it asked backwards. You've actually got this asked backwards. But go ahead, Rick.
No, go
I was going to say, there is a big name on this list. It doesn't happen to be on the Ticats list, and that's Ian Book on Winnipeg. A starting quarterback with Notre Dame. How much bigger can you get, really? And while some people might look at this as, an NFL future reject list, let's not forget that all of these guys are American. They all strive to play in the National Football League, and you can't blame them. It's like playing junior hockey in Canada. They want to play in the National Hockey League. Many of them won't. Most of them won't. So they'll go to Europe. They'll spend their time in the AHL, the ECHL, whatever the case is. Doesn't mean they're quality individuals or we shouldn't pay attention to them. But certainly not everyone is going to make the big show. But I think this is important for the CFL to say, hey, here's the guys who we're interested in. So get interested in them as a fan because they could potentially one day star for your team.
One of the problems
is Steve, I got it asked backwards. Why?
Because if you put the big names on that everybody recognizes, everybody will know that they're not coming here. These are the guys who, I'll tell you something, most of these guys here have the potential to come here. If I'm the Ticats, I follow this up with the three guys who are playing, right? That you can actually see on TV because they're going to be pretty soon. As soon as the hockey and basketball are over, there's going to be nothing. A little baseball for a while. Going to be nothing but football on TV. So there's going to be a lot more college. And two of these guys are starting quarterbacks in the senior year. One at Appalachian State, The other one at Wake Forest. Now, Wake Forest is on 2 ball time. So is App State because they're very powerful for the level of football. And the third guy, actually, Tamu, Bubs, was re-signed the very next day after he was cut. He's on the practice roster with Kansas City Chiefs now. I don't know if he still is today, but he was earlier this week. So if I'm them, I do some progress reports on that in some form or another. But I don't think if you put the big fat names out there, and now Kaepernick was different because his situation was such, he's a bit like Manziel. He was in a place with nowhere to go. So potentially he could have come here, but he'd made millions, right? So likely he wasn't coming.
I liken this list to, whenever there is an up-and-comer or even a player that's been overlooked in the Swedish Elite League or the KHL, and we hear that the Maple Leafs and the Rangers and the Habs are interested in bringing this player over to the NHL, I liken this list to that because it's the thought of what if, what can this individual add to our team? I got to go Google this guy because, check out his stats in the Finnish league or wherever he's playing. It just adds a bit of intrigue and it ignites a conversation. I think especially with the CFL where they are right now with no 2020 season, who knows what's going to happen next year. Unfurling these lists are vitally important to keep that conversation going.
And Scott, you're right. They're not going to get any new fans, casual fans out of this, and they're not even going to. This is polishing the shoes of their base that they need to keep interested.
Is there more though? I mean, is there more they can do with this? Like, I mean, are you setting a precedence for things to keep fans very interested and engaged during the off season? Is this maybe an issue that really the league should focus on and open the doors to many other things?
Sure.
To let us know.
Well, if you want to do, if you want to be really crazy, just live stream your contract negotiations. That would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon,
But
but you never know.
When you're talking about that, Scott, I think you're on the right track with expanding. Throw all 45 out there. Who cares? Because once you got people are a little bit worried about the intrigue inside the football thing, but that's just creaky bones. That's like rust in the knees and in the joints. You're just afraid to move on something. Throw it all out there. There are some reasons for not doing it, but I think now.
But what are those reasons?
Well, there's a lot of technical reasons from what I understand, the way that player agents can negotiate type things. Now, it doesn't mean anything now because nobody's signing any players. Nobody, because you don't know what the budget is. You don't know what the salary, and we know there's going to be some pretty hard negotiations going on in the offseason. There's going to be a lot of cost cutting, and that means labor. So stuff's going to happen with that. But this year aside, there are some things where, people like to move back and forth and play little games, watch each other. Like each team knows the other team's list. But they also worry a little bit about players and agents using it as some leverage to spring out of it because maybe they can get an under-the-table deal from Montreal, but you're on Hamilton's list. So now you force Hamilton to make you an offer, and if they don't make you an offer, then you're free to go. There's all these little technical things. Well, do the things to change the technical things. Like, why hide the 35? Because I think Scott's right to say, who else is on? Who else, when you sort of intimated, who else is out there on the 35? Why hide the other 35?
If this is here's I guess kind of the challenge I have, and I made my point about it's a bunch of guys that probably you're wishing are going to come here but aren't. This is a marketing thing. You have something to market, and in that case, Steve, your point about releasing them all and making sure there's a few big names on there is important. Even if you've got 45 spots, you get the CFL office to tell the teams, listen, we can't force you to, but we're begging you, throw a couple of your 45 on guys have no hope of coming here, but every single person knows who they are.
I think they probably are. There are some of those, and I'll shut up. Believe me.
No.
Right after this, there are guys. What I would do, and I think they are the ones that have it ass backwards here. If I'm the Ticats, right away, right while we're talking about this thing, I go to the current roster, particularly the guys who are really good, and say these guys were on our negotiation list.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I mean, you know what? If I'm the CFL and if this is a marketing move, and maybe they do this, I don't know, but I would say, guys, use 2 spots. Somebody put down that Tom Brady. We know in a million, trillion, bazillion years he's never coming, but just so it's a name that people will know that you can talk about. If it's a marketing move, and if it's not a marketing move,
They're going to laugh at you.
I don't know why you're doing it.
They're going to laugh at you.
Maybe, but if the idea is to get people talking about the CFL, which is what we all agree is part of the reason for this, that will get people talking about the CFL. And maybe Brady's the bad example, okay, because he was the first name off my head, but take another starting quarterback from the NFL, right? So someone who's more CFL-ish.
Yeah.
You know,
well, not only that, it's got to be a guy, and it's probably primarily going to be a quarterback, because most people know most of the starting quarterbacks in the NFL. If you're a football fan, it's got to be one of those guys who are, on the really the starting gate of their career. So Josh Rosen is a pretty good example.
He's on there, 10, right?
Yeah, top 10 NFL draft pick who hasn't panned out with a couple of teams. So there's a possibility that he might one day come up here. You can't put any of the veterans or maybe even any of the superstar multi-million-dollar guys, because they basically earn in 1 year what the entire CFL does in a season. So, and I think even, in today's digital age, tweaking how they unleash this list might create a little more conversation. Every day of the week you have a different team, unfurling their top 10 or their top 3. And then, hey, for more on their complete 45-man negotiation list, go online to this and yada, 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 and make a whole kind of production out of it. And just blow it up a little bit to, again, create that conversation.
It's a tricky one. It is, because as Steve has said, this is it's a balance. It's sort of half marketing and half football, and half you want to tell and half you don't want to tell.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. To me, it has never, other than once or twice, and to be fair, once or twice there have been some names that have popped up that you went, ooh, okay. And if that is the response, then I think that worked. But again, the flip side of that, as Steve also pointed out, I'm giving lots of credits to Steve today, as Steve also pointed out, is that if you are putting guys there who are not going to come and does what I said, and it sort of looks to be a desperation move. So, it's a balancing act, and I'm not sure how you do it exactly. What do you think? Is this a brilliant marketing move, especially now that the CFL is sort of in the doldrums and stagnant and not operating? Is this a great way to get people talking? Or is it kind of an act of desperation that you kind of shrug at and you go, I've never heard of these guys. Why do I care? Let us know. Our Twitter handles are on the screen. We would love to hear from you. We'd love to get your thoughts on this one. Also, subscribe down below. It is free. It is fun. You get prizes when you subscribe down below, I'm told. I don't know who gives them. It's sent to your house. I'm not sure. Service Ontario health cards. Just come to your house when you subscribe down below. No, not that, Robin? Okay.
See, Bubba was in a good mood.
Well, that's our equivalent of putting Brady on the negotiation list there, Scott, what you just said.
Let us know. Keep following us. We'd love to talk to you again soon.